If it goes bump in the night, it's here on DYK. Welcome to the history of Halloween. Hello and welcome to the spooky edition of DYK. I'm your host, Pete Collman, and happy Halloween. You know, it's this time of year in October that we start thinking about getting ready for the winter. And that's when the days are getting shorter and the nights are getting longer. And you can only imagine what the ancient peoples of Europe were feeling at this time. Will they make it through the winter? Is the veil a little thinner this time of year to talk to the dead? Well, many Celts believed that this was true, and they had a festival called Samhain. Samhain was later incorporated by Christianity to kind of bring them into the fold. And it was somewhat bundled all together thanks to Pope Gregory III in the 8th century, bundled together with All Saints' Day and later All Souls' Day. And that kind of won some maybe converts over, is that they didn't quite get rid of the old pagan traditions and win these folks on over to Christianity. Well, we're going to talk about that tonight in this very spooky history of Halloween. The etymology of the word Halloween originates from the Christian roots of hallowed reverence on the eve before All Saints' Day, known as All Hallows' Eve. It was a way for Christians to win over the pagans. This was not an uncommon practice to take a ritual of nature or of the supernatural and put a Christian spin on it to bridge the cultures and unite under the cross of Christianity. However, some age-old pagan traditions or rituals survive Christian scrutiny and are still practiced today during Halloween and even at Christmas time. Activities such as divination, ghost stories of the recently departed, and practices that can subdue evil spirits that could bring sickness, famine, or death are all part of the activities of Halloween. These were real concerns for rural people farming their land, for their landlords, and for themselves. A harvest gone bad very well could spell doom. Seeing what was coming through the divination of common items like reading seeds of fruits, forecasting harsh weather by observing livestock, or even melting lead into a shape, all could give you an edge on telling the future. Late October is getting darker, as so do the stories told around a hearth or fire pit, sometimes used as a parable to scare children into behaving, or other stories to entertain through morbid curiosity of death and the afterlife. Many of these traditions of wearing costumes, bobbing for apples, or ghost storytelling have been passed down through the ages. Brought from Ireland and Great Britain, these traditions took hold in the New World as colonial North Americans gladly adopted these Halloween activities that welcomed in a bountiful harvest, whereas Halloween parties would take place to share in bumper crop yields. Virginians and New Englanders alike reveled in the fun of All Hallows' Eve. To get an idea of what these parties were like, you need not look further than Washington Irving's tale of the legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Pickety witch, the pickety witch. Who's got a kiss for the pickety witch? The pickety witch, the pickety witch. Who's got a kiss for the pickety witch?
Is it Theodore?
No, pardon, miss, I am only a stranger.
Then have a kiss on account.
We'll step aside for one moment, but when we come back, we'll talk about the symbols of Halloween. So stay tuned. It's hard to believe it's almost that time again. The holiday season is right around the corner, and a great way to discover some ancient and not so ancient Christmas traditions is to order your copy of the Curious Czech Christmas book. Our audio and YouTube audiences from the Bohemican podcast and Past Access will love this book centered on the Czech and Moravian holiday traditions that have stood the test of time. The Curious Czech Christmas is chock full of Christmas traditions, illustrations, history, and even Czech recipes that can bring home that Bohemia feel for this holiday season. If you would like to help out the Bohemican podcast or Past Access, skate on over to podcastnikshop.com or find the Curious Czech Christmas book on Amazon. Remember, you can order the ebook or softback edition in English on Amazon Marketplace worldwide. Merry Christmas and Vesele Vanoce. Welcome back to DYK. You know, there's a lot of symbols when we talk about Halloween and All Hallows' Eve. Some of the symbols kind of focus on death and the macabre. Other symbols kind of focus on evil and the devil. What about jack-o'-lanterns and witches and the colors of black and orange? They all play a part in the symbols of Halloween. Halloween conjures up a multitude of images, from scary ghost stories to the fun of trick-or-treating. Really, what's Halloween without grinning pumpkins, cackling witches, and frightening ghosts? Even the colors of black and orange have their place in the celebration that commemorates the balance of harvest and the impending darkness of winter. But it's the headliners of the spooky season that we will focus upon tonight. Let's take a look at some symbols of Halloween: the witch, her black cat, and the jack-o'-lantern. Witches soaring through the air on All Hallows Eve, preparing their potions with their covens on a cold, dark evening. It's a popular vision in our tales of All Hallows Eve. However, of all the images of Halloween that most likely deserve a facelift, it is the symbology of the evil witch. The history of witchcraft is somewhat shrouded in misinformation and hysteria that led to the countless deaths during the horrible purges of the Burning Times. All it took was an accusation of witchcraft, an unexplained happening, or a peculiar birthmark to condemn a person to death. Many had no connection to the practice of witchcraft, and those that did, through religious practice of Wicca, suffered torment nonetheless from vengeful neighbors and hired inquisitors. This dark history may contribute to the reason the witch is connected to Halloween. It is also believed that the folklore from the ancient festival of Samhain has contributed to this legend of the witch. Most of these spiritual women with connections to nature brought the wrath from those afraid of non-traditional thought or peculiar prayer practices. It may have even been the use of hallucinogens that leads to the idea of women riding on a broomstick through the night. You see, it is possible that during meetings between these spiritual women, an ointment was made to rub into one's skin and give them a sense of clairvoyance and a sensation of flying. The broom, synonymous with a woman's housework, was adopted into the legend, and together you have the flying witch, suspicious and mysterious. But with this folklore, we cannot leave out the image of the witch's familiar, that is to say, a trusted animal or harbinger of evil. In many cases, it was the black cat.
He too aroused suspicion. Many believed that his silent and mysterious ways were the ways of evil spirits, and that his steady, soul-piercing gaze must be the look of the devil.
Then all at once he turned into a terrible demon and came flying at me, screaming like the voice of doom.
Together, the black cat and the cackling old witch serve as misunderstood historic characters that, like it or not, are part and parcel of the Halloween season. Our final symbol of Halloween is the jack-o'-lantern. This image has its roots in Ireland and Britain, carved out of turnips turned into candle holders to allow one to walk at night and scare away evil. Later in America, the larger pumpkin served as a better evil-repelling nightlight than the smaller gourd. Yet it is the folklore of the old world that brings us this tradition of carving a face into a gourd or turnip to ward off the things that go bump in the night. It begins with the tale of Stingy Jack, a roustabout and town drunk that sold his soul to the devil so he could pay his pub tab. The devil turned into a silver coin and the tab was paid, but then Jack placed the devil's coin into his pocket next to a crucifix, trapping the devil. This coerced Satan agreed to Jack's demand. In exchange for Satan's freedom, he had to spare Jack's soul for 10 full years. But once Jack died, the devil took his due and condemned Jack's spirit to wander the nights with only a lit carved turnip to light his way. The peasant folk would connect this legend to the mysterious flames that appeared and disappeared in the nearby bogs, as proof that Jack and his jack-o'-lantern was walking about. In reality, it was the spontaneous combustion of gas in the swamp bogs, known as will-o'-the-wisps, that the people were seeing. Today's grinning pumpkin is truly a hallmark of the Halloween season, attached to the legend of a guy that should never have made a deal with the devil. Some of the wonderful things that you remember as a child is the night of Halloween, October 31st. It was one of the only nights you can go out all night long in the dark, maybe unsupervised, and get candy and walk around and see other kids in their costumes and kind of get that spirit of Halloween. It was really, really rare for a kid to have that kind of freedom. So as an adult, you remember that with fond memories. But the history of Halloween, especially in the United States, is a little bit darker in that sense. From 1850 to about 1950, there were a lot of problems with youth going wild, and that's exactly what they did. They used Halloween more for the trick than the treat, and if they especially didn't get the treat, they did some pretty nasty tricks. It was so bad that many cities, towns, and hamlets outlawed Halloween altogether. So this is a look at Halloween from the side of the tricksters. But isn't Halloween primarily a fun time for children? Well, yes, it is, as it did morph into that for a bit, later outlawed, and then came back into fashion as a kids-centered holiday. Flash forward to the late 1800s, and kids were taking the trick part of trick-or-treat to a whole new level. Mostly told to be seen and not heard, children took Halloween as a time to let loose, and let loose they did. Pranks involving tipped-over outhouses, livestock gates removed, and even wagon wheels stolen were all tricks performed by the youth in rural and city areas across America. By the turn of the century, things were getting out of control, with real damage and harm caused by the roaming gangs of children, looking to start fires and steal on Halloween night.
Tony, I saw the whole thing. You should have run when I did, and you would have seen the whole thing, too. What happened? When I got loose from John, I ran back. There was a policeman and a great big crowd, and he was mad, let me tell you. Everyone in the trolley was mad.
Mad about what? What have you two been up to?
The chorus of trick or treat was a real threat. No treat most certainly meant a prank coming your way. By the 1930s, many cities, towns, and hamlets across America outlawed Halloween, thus putting a stop to this destruction. So Halloween became a night once again for adults to party and the kids to stay home. However, post-World War II America changed the prohibitive mindset of Halloween and allowed these small baby boomers to roam the streets once again, dressed up and looking for candy and handing off this nighttime celebration to their children and their children's children. Halloween was back where it belonged, as a children's rite of passage. So there are many ways to get into the Halloween spirit, but some of the best ways are to watch some great movies or cartoons to kind of get you in that mood here in October. Of course, there are a lot of movies that are horror movies that can kind of send that chill up your spine and keep you awake for 3 or 4 days. We're not going to talk about those movies. Pete's top 5 Halloween movies and cartoons are more of a family-friendly affair. So without further ado, let's go to Pete's top 5 Halloween movies and TV shows. If you have little ones around, or you want to relive that magical Halloween spirit you had as a kid, this top 5 Halloween film list is just for you. I'm sure my picks will provide the right mix of spooky, nostalgia, and fun. At number 5, Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Only Tim Burton can make this stop animation masterpiece come alive when talking about the dead and focusing on Jack Skellington's world of Halloween Town. Plus, the songs are great. Number 4, Walt Disney's 1950 cartoon classic, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Pulled from Washington Irving's classic, good old Bing Crosby narrates and sings throughout this tale of Ichabod Crane and his run-in with the Headless Horseman. It's a much better choice than any other adaptation out there for young eyes. At the 3rd spot, 2017's Coco. This beautiful Pixar animated movie dives on into the Day of the Dead from the eyes of a small boy from Mexico.
What color is the sky? Ay, mi amor, ay, mi amor.
Death in this movie is not as heavy a topic as you might imagine it could be, and it is truly a beautiful script with a more beautiful computer animation. At runner-up, Hocus Pocus, another Disney submission on the Halloween genre, and it may be one of the best for all ages. This 1993 live-action film stars Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy as the Sanderson sister witches. These witches are on a quest to collect Salem's children to take their essence to stay young forever. Before we get to the top spot, here are a few honorable mentions. 1984's Ghostbusters. It still holds up today with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis trying to save New York from evil forces. All to the tune of Ray Parker Jr.'s question, who you gonna call? A Mel Brooks classic from 1974, one of my favorites, Young Frankenstein. Or Frankenstein, I'm not quite sure.
I have one question, Dr. Frankenstein.
My name, it's pronounced Frankenstein.
This black and white comedy classic, starring the late great Gene Wilder, is a fantastic ride, poking fun at some of the old 1930 Frankenstein movies.
Abby someone. Abby who? Abby Normal. Abby Normal. I'm almost sure that was the name. Are you saying that I put an abnormal brain into a 7.5-foot long, 54-inch wide gorilla? Is that what you're telling me?
And another honorable mention, Hotel Transylvania.
Check it out, I'm a Franken homie.
This is the first of 3 digital animated films that should entertain the kids by showcasing nearly all of the Halloween monsters on one screen. Adam Sandler as a neurotic father that just so happens to be Dracula is fantastic.
What are you babbling about? Ever come again? I love your Dracula voice. It's so over the top.
Now at number 1, the classic of all Halloween classics. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. This was one of the few cartoons to show in the evening hours on TV when I was growing up, and it announced that Halloween was upon us. It deals with Linus not giving up on the idea that the mysterious Great Pumpkin will bring toys and candies to all kids that believe. That is, of course, if you spend Halloween night in a pumpkin patch. Charlie Brown has his normal issues.
I got a rock.
Snoopy is a World War I flying ace. And Lucy, well, she's still pretty bossy. The Great Pumpkin is one of my childhood favorites of all time.
Blah! My lips touch dog lips! Blah! Ah!
Halloween is a time to kind of remember your youth. The time that you were able to go outside at night without a lot of supervision, walk the streets and again see other people in costumes and meet your neighbors and get candy and maybe perform a little trick or treat with throwing maybe, toilet paper in the tree or egging someone's house. Of course, I never did that, but let's just say that it happens. There's really nothing more evil than trying to take out wet toilet paper out of a tree 3 days after Halloween. So I do feel a little guilty about that actually at some point. And as you get to be older and you become a parent, you kind of relive these times again with your kids. So we pass this tradition on and on and on. And it's one of the things that I treasure in my youth, thinking about those wonderful days of planning out your costumes, trick-or-treating, maybe going to Halloween parties, watching that special sort of cartoon on television right before you went out trick-or-treating, and of course coming back with a buttload of candy and counting it on the floor and saying what you're going to eat before you go to bed, right? Those are some great memories of Halloween, and that's something I think a lot of people can relate to. So that's the history of Halloween. Now you know. We want to thank you for joining us on this very special edition of DYK, the history of Halloween. We hope you have a happy and safe Halloween season if you're watching this in October. We have so many great shows at pastaccess.com. We actually cover a lot of ground, and we're happy to do that here on Past Access DYK. Remember, you can help out the show by going to podcastnicshop.com and taking a look at some of our swag that we have over there. Everything you buy there helps the show go a little bit further down the line. So until next time, for this spooky evening, I'm Pete Collman. Take care.
This has been Past Access Did You Know with Pete Collman. For more information on this topic or other DYK shows, please visit us at pastaccess.com. Be sure to visit our Past Access YouTube channel, like and subscribe.